The cold wind blew through the spaceport streets of Zariah's Prime, a planet filled with lights, ships, and alien voices. But no one noticed the small girl sitting near Dock 12. Her knees pulled to her chest, her arms thin like sticks, and her glowing blue skin covered in dust and cuts. Her name was Nevra, and she had been alone for so long. She didn't know how many days had passed since she last spoke to someone who looked her in the eye. Aliens passed by her every hour. Tall creatures with metal armor, short ones with gas masks. Some with 4 eyes, some with wings. But none stopped, none helped. Some stared. Some whispered. Some turned their heads away quickly, like she was some sickness that might spread just by looking. She didn't cry anymore. She had run out of tears long ago. All she had now was silence, hunger, and the cold. Nevra was born on a distant moon that no longer existed. Her people were scattered, lost, hunted, and feared. Something about their energy made machines go strange. Lights flickered, doors jammed, systems glitched when her kind got too close. People called them cursed, even though they never meant harm. Nevra didn't even understand why it happened. She was just a girl, alone, hungry, scared, and invisible. To the world, every day, she sat near the spaceport hoping someone would notice her. Someone would stop, maybe offer a piece of bread or even a smile. But instead, she heard words like unclean, dangerous, or bad luck. Aliens pulled their children away. Some even hissed. One vendor threw water at her to make her move away from his stall, and the guards. They just laughed and said, "Let her rot. It's not our problem." But on that one night, everything changed. A ship landed at Dock 12. Steam hissed, metal clanked, and from the ramp walked a tall human man with a beard, a backpack over his shoulder, and tired eyes. His name was Aaron Vance, a cargo hauler from Earth who had seen many strange things across the galaxy. But tonight, he noticed something most people ignored. A small girl curled up near the wall, her head down, her body shaking. He stopped walking, his boots quiet on the steel floor. He looked at her, really looked, and for a moment, Nevra felt it. Someone was seeing her, not as a problem, not as a curse, but as a person. "Hey," Aaron said gently, kneeling down, his voice calm. "You okay?" Nevra didn't speak. She just stared at him with wide silver eyes, not sure if she should run or cry or pretend she didn't exist. No one ever asked her if she was okay before. He reached into his bag and pulled out a protein bar, unwrapped it and held it toward her. She looked at it, then at him. Her hands didn't move, her lips stayed shut, but her eyes screamed hunger. "It's all right," Aaron said, placing the bar next to her and sitting down. "You don't have to talk, just eat if you're hungry." After a long pause, Nevra reached out, slow, careful, like she was expecting him to slap her hand away, but he didn't. He just watched quietly, and when she took the bar, her fingers shaking, and bit into it, he smiled a little. "That's better," he said, like he had just fixed a broken machine, not helped a starving girl. She chewed slowly, then faster, then like her life depended on it, and maybe it did. Aaron didn't speak much. He just sat with her, letting her eat in peace, like she wasn't cursed, like she wasn't unwanted. After a few minutes, her body relaxed just a little. And then she whispered, voice barely there, "Why?" "Why what?" he asked. "Why help me?" She said, her eyes full of confusion and sadness, "Aren't you afraid?" Aaron looked around, at the aliens avoiding them, the guards who didn't care, sky above, full of ships, and then back at her. "No, I'm not afraid of you," he said. "You're just a kid who needs someone to care." She blinked, her mouth slightly open, stunned by his words. No one ever said anything like that to her before. He stood up slowly and held out his hand. "Come on, let's get you somewhere warm." She stared at his hand, afraid to touch it. Afraid this was a trick, but something inside her, something buried deep beneath fear and pain, told her to trust him, so she took it. His grip was warm and strong, and as he helped her to her feet, her knees almost gave out. He caught her gently and held her steady. She leaned against him, not because she wanted to, but because she had. No strength left, they walked together through the spaceport. And every alien stared, some in shock, some in disgust, some in fear. But Aaron didn't stop, didn't let go, didn't care. He held her like she mattered. When they reached his ship, he helped her inside, gave her a warm blanket, some soup, and a place to sit. She looked around the small room, blinking at the soft lights, the quiet hum of the engine, the smell of real food. Rest, he said. You're safe here. She didn't know what safe meant anymore. But in that moment, as her head touched the pillow, her body wrapped in warmth, and the sound of someone preparing food nearby, she thought maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who truly saw her. Not as a curse, not as a danger, but as a girl who mattered. And for the first time in her life, Nevra fell asleep with hope. Nevra woke slowly, her body unsure if it was still dreaming. The blanket wrapped around her felt soft, warm, and real. The soft hum of the ship's engine filled the quiet room. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't wake up on a cold floor or in the shadows of fear. She opened her eyes and blinked at the small room. The lights were dim, not harsh like in the spaceport. The air smelled like something she hadn't smelled in a long time. Cooked food. She sat up slowly, still wrapped in the blanket, afraid to move too fast, afraid it would all disappear if she blinked too hard. Aaron stood near a small stove in the corner of the room, stirring something in a pot, steam rising gently. He wore a gray shirt, sleeves rolled up, and a quiet focus on his face. He turned when he heard her move and smiled. Not a fake smile, but a warm one. Hey, he said gently, you're up. Nevra opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. Her voice had been used so little, it barely remembered how to work, so she nodded, just a tiny nod, like a whisper from her head. Aaron walked over and placed a bowl of hot soup in front of her. Not too full, not too fast, like he knew she hadn't eaten properly in a long time. The smell made her eyes water, not from pain, but something else. Something soft inside her chest that hurt in a different way. Take your time, he said, sitting across from her. It's just vegetable broth, easy on the stomach. She picked up the spoon with shaky fingers and slowly brought it to her mouth. The first sip burned slightly, not from heat, but from shock. It had flavor, real flavor, not the tasteless scraps she had stolen or begged for. Her hands moved faster, bite after bite, until the bowl was empty. And she felt a warmth in her belly that she had forgotten existed. Aaron didn't say much. He just watched, calm and quiet, giving her space. When she finished, she looked up at him, confused, suspicious, and hopeful all at once. No one ever fed her without asking for something back. No one ever gave without wanting to take. Why are you helping me? She finally asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Aaron leaned back in his seat and crossed his arms, thinking for a second. Because I saw a little girl freezing in the dark, and I couldn't walk away, he said simply, and because I've seen too many others walk away. Nevra lowered her head, trying to hide her eyes, but he saw them anyway. Full of questions, full of pain, full of the kind of hurt that didn't come from cuts or bruises, but from being forgotten. Do you know why they hate me? She asked after a long pause. Why they all move away when I get close? Aaron nodded slowly. Some of them say you mess with their systems, energy waves or something. She looked up quickly, afraid he was going to tell her to leave now. But he didn't. He was still sitting there, calm and curious, not scared. I can't control it, she said, her voice trembling. It just happens. When I get too scared or tired, machines break or blink. But I don't mean to do it, I swear. Aaron shrugged, so don't get too scared or tired." He smiled gently. Easy fix. She blinked at him, unsure if he was joking. But the smile didn't fade, and for the first time she laughed. Just a little, but it was real, and it surprised even her. They spent the next few hours in quiet. Peace. Aaron gave her a soft shirt to wear, too big for her but clean and warm. He let her rest in the crew bed while he sat in the pilot chair, fixing old wires and checking flight paths. Every once in a while, he would glance back at her, and she would pretend to sleep, though her eyes stayed open. Watching him, he didn't lock the door, didn't ask her questions, didn't treat her like a problem, and slowly, very slowly, she started to feel something strange inside her. Not fear, not hunger, not shame. Something like safety. Later that night, a loud knock came at the ship's entry ramp. Nevra jumped. Heart racing, eyes wide, her body ready to run or hide. Aaron held up a hand and said calmly, "Stay here." He stepped out and returned a minute later with a bag of supplies, another protein pack, some parts for the ship, and a small blanket. Traded with a Grolin merchant, he said, "They don't care who you feed as long as you pay." Nevra took the blanket and held it close, not because she was cold, but because no one had ever brought something for her before. Something soft, something hers. Aaron sat down and said, "Tomorrow we'll leave this place. Find somewhere safer, quieter. Are you keeping me?" She asked, voice unsure, like she couldn't believe she was allowed to stay. "I'm not keeping you," he said gently. "I'm just not letting you go unless you want to." That night, she didn't cry herself to sleep. She didn't wake from nightmares. She didn't shake from fear. She just lay there, in a room that smelled of food and warmth, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like hope, and for the first time in her life, she believed she might actually be safe. She closed her eyes, one hand still holding the edge of the new blanket, and whispered to herself so quietly that even she barely heard it. "Thank you, human." The ship floated quietly through space, far away from the crowded station where Nevra had nearly faded into the shadows. The stars outside the window twinkled gently, like tiny lights whispering stories across the dark sky inside the ship. Warmth filled the small space, but something strange had started to happen. Aaron first noticed it while checking his control panel. The navigation screen blinked twice, then turned blue, then returned to normal. He frowned, tapped the screen, and ran a diagnostic. Nothing showed as broken. No alerts, no errors, just a flicker, like the ship was reacting to something nearby. It happened again the next day. The lights above the cooking station dimmed when Nevra walked past. Not off, just softer, gentler, like they were adjusting to her presence. Aaron watched quietly, trying not to let her see his concern. He didn't want her to feel like a problem again. Nevra, unaware of his thoughts, had started to open up a little more. She talked more each day, asked questions about space, about humans, about Earth. She told him how her people once lived on a small green moon full of life, how they used to sing songs to the stars, but now she didn't know where any of them were, if any were even alive. One evening, as they floated near an asteroid field, Aaron noticed the ship's shields fluctuating, not dangerously, just pulsing. He turned to Nevra, who was sitting on the floor, playing softly with a broken circuit board he'd given her to tinker with. Her fingers glowing slightly, like static, danced around her skin. He stood slowly and walked over, kneeling beside her. "Nevra," he said gently, "can I ask you something a little personal?" She looked up at him, a little nervous, but nodded. "Okay, when you're upset or tired, do machines act weird around you?" Her eyes dropped, her hands froze, and she whispered, "Yes, always, even when I don't want it." Aaron nodded slowly. "It's okay. I just wanted to know. I think your body gives off some kind of energy. Maybe not dangerous, just different." She pulled her hands away from the circuit board, and hugged her knees. That's why they hate me. My blood, my energy. They say it breaks everything. They call me a living error. Aaron's heart ached. He reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not an error, Navra. You're unique, maybe special. No one wants something that breaks things, she whispered. Not even my own people. They left me behind. Aaron didn't speak for a moment. He let her words settle in too. The air, heavy and painful. Then he said, then they were fools. Because sometimes what looks like a glitch is really just a power no one understands yet. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, searching. You really think that? I don't think it, he said. I know it. That night. He ran a few quiet scans while she slept. Nothing invasive, just light readings. What he found surprised him. Her body gave off low-frequency pulses. Not random, but rhythmic, almost. Like music in waveform. And when he matched those waves to the ship's systems, something incredible happened. The damaged stabilizer corrected itself without repair. He stared at the screen. Eyes wide, heart pounding. She wasn't breaking. The ship, she was healing it. The energy coming from her was not destruction. It was balance. It was harmony. The reason systems flickered was because they didn't understand her pattern. But once aligned, they worked better than before. The next morning, he told her everything. Showed her the readings. Her hands trembled as she looked at the data. You mean, I helped the ship? Aaron grinned. You don't break machines, Nevra. You wake them up. Tears filled her eyes. She covered her mouth, and for a long time, said nothing. Then a single word slipped out. Why? Didn't anyone see this before? Because they didn't look, he said softly. They were too busy being afraid. She stood and walked to the control panel. Her hand hovered over it, not touching, just close, and the screen brightened. Gently, the hum of the ship steadied, and for the first time, she felt proud. Over the next few days, Aaron helped her understand her energy better. Together, they tested what she could do when calm. Her waves smoothed power flow through the engines. When focused, she could reset systems without touching them. She laughed as lights followed her like dancing fireflies. And Aaron couldn't help but smile every time she discovered something new. They created little games, seeing how long she sat, seeing how long she could keep a bulb glowing by just thinking about it. She wasn't just part of the ship now, she was part of its life. And the ship responded to her like a heartbeat to a song. But not everyone would see it that way. Aaron knew the galaxy wasn't ready to understand her yet. If word got out, they'd try to take her, study her, maybe even cage her again. So he kept their discoveries secret, for now, still, in the quiet of space. Far from hate and fear, a strange little girl and a tired human man worked side by side, learning, laughing, healing. She didn't need to be fixed. She just needed to be seen. And, for the first time, Nevra didn't feel like a mistake. She felt powerful, and Aaron. He was no longer just her rescuer. He was her friend, her protector, and maybe, just maybe, the first person who truly believed in her. A few weeks had passed since Aaron took Nevra from the docks of Zerali's Prime. Their small ship, the Wayfinder, now drifted quietly between trade routes and forgotten corners of space. Inside, it felt peaceful, like a small home away from fear. Nevra had her own blanket, her own seat near the window, and every night she fell asleep to the hum of the engine, feeling safe for the first time in her life. But safety doesn't last long when you've broken the rules. Aaron knew they couldn't hide forever. Not after fleeing the station without clearance, and especially not with Navra on board. The Galactic Station enforcers known as Black Code were strict, fast, and merciless when it came to broken laws. And a human smuggler protecting a classified energy hazard was enough to get a ship shot down without warning. Still, Aaron didn't regret it, not for a second, but Nevra began to sense the tension growing. She saw how Aaron's eyes flicked to the radar every few minutes, how he kept weapons charged even while cooking dinner, how he moved more quietly, and how sometimes, at night, he didn't sleep at all. What's wrong? She asked one morning, watching him clean the hall plating with unusual care. We're being watched, he said softly, not looking at her. Sensors keep catching trace signals following us. Too clean, too regular to be pirates. Her breath caught. Is it? Them, he nodded slowly. Enforcers, maybe, or bounty hunters. But someone wants you back. And they're not asking nicely. Nevra lowered her head, her voice breaking. You should let me go. They'll hurt you because of me. Aaron dropped the tools and knelt in front of her, his voice firm, eyes steady. Listen to me. You are not the problem. They are, and I won't let them take you. But you'll get hurt, she whispered. I'd rather get hurt standing beside you than live watching you be taken again. He said, her lips trembled, but she didn't argue again that night. They tried to reroute through an abandoned mining corridor, hoping to shake the trail, but as they neared the asteroid belt, the alarm blared. 3 ships had appeared behind them, sleek, black, and fast Enforcer-class interceptors. Aaron cursed under his breath, diving into the pilot's seat. Hold on, he shouted. We're running. The ship roared forward, weaving between rocks and debris. The Enforcers gave chase without warning shots, plasma fire lighting up the black void. Nevra held onto her seat, her heart pounding as the lights flickered, her energy surging without control. The ship shook, took a hit to the rear thruster. But Aaron kept flying, his hands steady, eyes focused. The man wasn't a soldier, but in that moment he flew like one, fearless and wild. Nevra closed her eyes and focused. Her energy burst into the ship, stabilizing systems, fixing the radar, powering the shields faster than the engines could. Recharge, and suddenly, the Wayfinder wasn't just running, it was fighting back. Aaron looked at the console, stunned. You're doing that? Nevra nodded, teeth clenched. Trying. You're amazing, he said, laughing even as the ship dodged another plasma blast. Then came the voice through the comms. Cold and sharp, unregistered vessel. Power down immediately and surrender. The hazardous entity on board. This is your only warning. Aaron flipped the comm off and growled, not a chance. With a sharp turn, he dove into the asteroid field, flying dangerously close to sharp edges and spinning rocks. The Enforcers followed, but not as skillfully. One clipped a rock and spun out. Another slowed, unsure. Only one stayed close. Nevra stood from her seat, energy pulsing in her hands. Let me try something, she said, walking to the engine core. What are you doing? Aaron asked, worried. Trust me, she whispered. She placed her palms on the engine conduit, and her energy poured in, steady, strong, clean. The ship surged forward with power it had never known. Systems aligned perfectly. Speed jumped beyond safe levels. The last Enforcer ship vanished in the rear display. Silence returned. Aaron sat back, gasping, sweat on his brow. That was incredible. Aaron sat back, gasping, sweat on his brow. That was incredible. Nevra collapsed into his arms, exhausted but smiling. I did something good. He held her tightly. You did more than good, kid. You saved us after that escape. News spread quietly in small corners of the Darknet and Whisper networks about a strange human ship that outran the Enforcers. Some said the human was mad. Others said he had a secret weapon. No one mentioned a little alien girl with glowing hands and the heart of a lion. Aaron kept flying, but from that day on, they changed their path, avoiding major stations, trading in secret, hiding in shadows, not because they were ashamed, but because the galaxy was still cruel, still blind to what it didn't understand. But in the Wayfinder, Nevra knew one truth louder than any siren. any order or any whisper. She wasn't being hidden because she was a curse. She was being protected because she was loved. And Aaron, her human, her first real friend, had stood against ships and fire and laws just to keep her safe. No one had ever done that for her. And if the enforcers came again, she'd fight beside him. Because now she had something worth protecting too. The stars stretched wide and quiet around them. After escaping the enforcers, Aaron and Nevra drifted further into the edges of known space, places where no trade routes passed, no stations monitored, and no rules reached. It was dangerous, yes, but it was free, and that was exactly what they needed. Aaron spent hours scanning old maps, looking for somewhere forgotten, a place that might offer shelter, or at least a moment of peace. Nevra stayed near him, watching every screen, curious but quiet. Her fingers sometimes glowing without meaning to, her energy now calm but ever present, like a heartbeat between systems. One evening, a strange signal appeared, weak and old, like it had been calling for years and no one had ever answered. Aaron frowned as he pulled it up. The signal came from an unmarked system, far beyond the border charts. Only a few fragments came through images of green land, tall trees, and what looked like ruins. It's not on any current database, Aaron said, rubbing his beard. Could be an abandoned colony, or a forgotten terraformer station. Nevra tilted her head, eyes shining. It feels warm, she whispered. I don't know why. I feel like I've heard that sound before. When I was little, that was enough for Aaron. He adjusted the course, set the ship toward the quiet system, and whispered under his breath, let's go see what history left behind. It took 2 days to reach the edge of the system. And when they did, they were met with silence, not broken, not damaged, just untouched, like a door no one had opened in hundreds of years. As they entered the orbit of the small green planet, both Aaron and Nevra stared at the view. Wide rivers cutting through glowing forests, mist over the lakes, and ruins peeking through the canopy like forgotten giants. It wasn't a dead world, it was sleeping. Aaron landed the ship near the edge of a cliff that overlooked a valley. The moment the ship touched down, Nevra stepped out and gasped. The air was soft, fresh, and full of strange sounds, birds, wind, leaves brushing each other like whispers. She walked barefoot across the moss, her toes sinking into it like a bed. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years, spinning in circles, letting her arms stretch to the sky. Aaron followed slowly, watching her with quiet amazement. He hadn't seen her smile like that before. Not with fear behind it, not with sadness hiding underneath. This was different. This was joy. They explored the ruins nearby, tall stone towers overgrown with vines, strange carvings in a language neither of them could read. Nevra touched the walls and felt something deep in her chest, like a memory that wasn't hers but still belonged to her somehow. This place, she whispered. It feels like it remembers people like me. Aaron nodded slowly. Maybe it was a sanctuary once. Maybe your people lived here before they vanished. They found a pool with crystal clear water where Nevra bathed while Aaron stood guard nearby. She let the water soak her skin, washing away the last pieces of the spaceport grime. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Later that night, Aaron checked the ship again, running energy diagnostics. And something strange caught his eye since landing. The ship had fully recharged even, though it hadn't been powered externally. He checked the readings twice, then a third time, but it was true. This place is alive. He said aloud. The land itself gives energy. Nevra stood behind him quietly, then said, "It likes me." He turned, eyebrows raised. "What do you mean?" She placed her glowing hand on the ship's panel and smiled. "The planet, I think. It doesn't push me away. It lets me stay." Aaron stared at her for a long time. then stepped outside and placed his palm against one of the mossy stones. It felt warm, not from the sun, but from something deeper, something ancient, like the stone was breathing. They decided to stay for a few days, resting, exploring. Building a small camp outside the ship, Aaron taught Nevra how to set up solar nets, how to gather supplies, how to cook real food instead of protein packs. She learned fast, curious, and eager, asking questions about everything. She found a flower that glowed in the dark and gave it to Aaron. "You helped me glow," she said. "Now I want to give you something that glows too." He took the flower and placed it gently in a jar, smiling with pride. "Thanks, kid. It's the most beautiful thing I've seen since Earth." One night, while watching the stars from the cliff, Nevra leaned against him and said, "Do you think there are others like me out there?" "I'm sure there are," Aaron replied. "But maybe they're hiding, like you were, scared." Waiting for someone to believe in them, she thought about that, then said, "I want to help them, someday. I want to find them and tell them they're not broken." Aaron put his arm around her and nodded. "And I'll fly you there. Wherever they are, in that quiet, forgotten world." Something had awakened, not just in the planet, but in both of them. Nevra was no longer a curse. She was a girl with purpose, with power, and with a human who stood beside her without fear. And Aaron, once just a lone cargo pilot, was now something more. He was her anchor, her family, and the man who helped her find a home in a galaxy that once called her unwanted. The days on the forgotten planet passed like a peaceful dream. Nevra's laughter echoed through the trees, and Aaron's face looked more relaxed than it had in years. But even in this hidden paradise, he knew the outside galaxy hadn't forgotten about them. The enforcers would still be searching, rumors would keep growing, and more ships would come, looking for the human with the alien girl. Aaron didn't fear for himself, but he feared for Nevra. If they found her and didn't understand her, they'd take her apart piece by piece just to learn what made her different. One afternoon, while repairing the backup comms dish, Aaron stared at the blinking screen and thought quietly. His fingers moved slower, his heart heavier. He knew hiding couldn't last forever, and something in his chest told him it was time to stop running. That night, as Nevra sat by the fire making shapes in the glowing sand, Aaron sat beside her and said, "What if we told the truth?" She looked at him, puzzled. "To who?" "To the galaxy," he replied. "What if they saw what you really are? Not a danger, not a curse, but something beautiful." Nevra blinked, fear creeping into her eyes. "What if they don't believe? What if they still hate me?" Aaron shook his head. "Some might, sure, but not all. And sometimes, someone just has to go first." She sat in silence, thinking, then finally nodded. "If you're with me, I'll do it." They spent the next day setting up the equipment. An old transmission tower that barely worked, a portable recorder from Aaron's old cargo logs, and a small satellite dish they repaired together. They didn't have fancy tech, but they had truth, and that was enough when everything was ready. Aaron pointed the camera at Nevra. She stood in front of the ancient stone arch behind their camp, glowing vines hanging like curtains, her silver eyes full of nerves, but also strength. Aaron gave her a thumbs up and whispered, "Just be you." The camera blinked, red recording. Nevra took a deep breath and stepped forward, her voice soft at first. "My name is Nevra," she said. "You may have heard stories about my kind. How we make ships break, how we are cursed, how we must be avoided." She paused, hands trembling slightly. But then she continued, "They left me on a station, alone, starving, afraid, and everyone passed by. No one looked at me." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. Then, one human stopped. One man gave me food, gave me warmth, gave me his hand. She stepped to the side and held up her palms, glowing softly. The plants behind her responded, glowing too. Lights from the stones pulsed with her. The air shimmered. "This is my energy," she said. "I can fix things, not break them. I helped heal a ship's engine. I helped it fly again. My energy speaks to machines, to plants, to systems, and I don't hurt anyone." She turned back to the camera, her voice now steady. "I am not a weapon. I am not a virus. I am not a mistake." Aaron watched from behind the lens, his heart full. "I don't want to hide anymore," Nevra said. "If there are others like me, I want you to know you're not alone. You're not broken." The feed ended. Aaron stepped forward and hugged her tightly. She leaned into him, her tiny arms wrapping around his waist. "That was brave," he whispered. "You did something amazing." He uploaded the footage to old relay networks, 2 underground channels. To every quiet signal space he could reach, the message was out, floating through the stars like a whisper of hope. At first, nothing happened. The galaxy was too big, too noisy, too full of lies. But then it began. A small medical team from a border moon sent a message. "We saw your girl fix a ship mid-flight. Can we learn how?" A teacher from a mining colony asked, "Can she speak to my students?" They're afraid of energy-born children, but not all messages were kind. Some called Aaron a traitor. Some said the girl should be contained. Some said it was all fake. And then came the worst, an anonymous ping from a shadow fleet. "We are coming." Aaron and Nevra read the message in silence, the air suddenly colder. Nevra looked up at him, fear in her voice again. "Did we do the wrong thing?" Aaron shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We did the only right thing. But now we prepare." They started packing supplies, moving deeper into the forest. Setting up shields around the valley, Nevra helped charge the old defenses using her energy. The planet seemed to rise with her. The air thicker, the light brighter, the stones humming softly when she walked past. She stood on a hill above the camp and whispered to the wind. "I'm not running again." Aaron stood beside, her hand resting on her shoulder. "They may come," he said. "But now we don't hide, we stand." And somewhere out in space, a small girl's voice kept moving from signal to signal, landing in places where silence once lived. Waking hearts that had forgotten how to feel because the truth had been spoken, and the galaxy had heard it. The sky above the valley changed, where once only stars had watched in silence. Now a ship hovered like a shadow against the blue, dark, cold, and humming with power. Its sleek metal frame bore no flag, no code, just darkness. Aaron stood at the edge of the cliff, his boots firm in the moss, eyes fixed on the sky. Beside him stood Nevra. Smaller, quieter, but glowing gently with each breath. She was no longer hiding behind him. She was standing beside him. "They're here," she said softly, not afraid, not shaking, just ready. Aaron nodded. "Let's meet them." They walked back toward the clearing where the ship had landed. It made no sound as its ramp lowered, and 3 figures stepped out tall, armor-clad, faces hidden under dark visors. One of them held a small scanner, its screen blinking rapidly as it pointed toward Nevra. "Energy Class Alpha confirmed." The one in front said, "Subject is identified as Nevra, unauthorized entity, to be taken into custody." Aaron stepped forward, arms crossed. "She's not going anywhere." The second enforcer raised a weapon. Sleek in silver, its barrel humming. "Stand down, human," he said. "This is not a choice." Nevra didn't flinch. Her hand glowed, her eyes narrowing. "You don't understand what I am," she said, her voice calm but steady. "We understand enough," the leader said. "You're a threat." "No," she whispered. Stepping forward, "I'm a light, not a fire." The scanner in their hands started to shake, lights flickering wildly. One of them dropped it in shock, stepping back. "What's happening?" Aaron placed a hand gently on Nevra's shoulder. "Show them," he said, quietly. She closed her eyes, held out both hands, and focused. Her energy pulsed softly, not harsh, not loud. Just steady, like a heartbeat. The moss beneath her feet brightened, the air shimmered, the weapons dimmed as if recognizing her. The ship's lights blinked in rhythm with her glow. The three enforcers looked around, uncertain now, unsure whether to fear her or listen. "I don't want to fight," Nevra said. "But I won't go back to the shadows. I won't be a secret anymore." The leader hesitated, lowering his weapon slowly. "This isn't what we were told," he said, almost to himself. Aaron stepped forward again. "She's not your enemy. But if you try to take her, I'll fight until my last breath." The moment held, still and thick, like a held breath. And then the third enforcer, silent until now, spoke. "We need to report this," he said. "She's not what they said. The data is wrong," without another word. They turned back toward their ship, the ramp closing behind them, and within seconds, the dark vessel lifted quietly into the sky and vanished into the stars. Nevra stood frozen. Blinking, they left. Aaron exhaled deeply, his shoulders dropping. "You did that." She turned and looked at him, her silver eyes wide and full of something new. Peace. The next day, messages began to pour in from across the outer systems, not from soldiers, but from scientists, teachers, parents, people who had seen her broadcast. People who wanted to understand, to connect, to learn. An education council from a neutral moon asked if she would speak to their children. A healer from a distant planet asked if she could help restore a damaged life pod system. Even a group of retired engineers offered to come and help protect the valley. For the first time, she wasn't a secret. She was a signal. Aaron and Nevra built a new home above the cliff. A simple structure, half metal, half stone, powered by her energy, warmed by the planet's breath. Visitors came slowly, always by invitation. Some stayed a day, some stayed forever. But all who came saw her not as a danger, but as a light. Had once been lost. One evening, as the stars blinked above and the fire crackled softly, Nevra sat beside Aaron on the edge of their new porch, her feet swinging slowly, her head resting against his side. "You know," she said, her voice soft, "I never thought anyone would ever touch me without fear." Aaron looked down at her, his hand resting gently on her back. "And now?" She smiled, eyes glowing faintly. "Now you hold me like I matter." He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. "Because you do." In a galaxy that had once whispered fear, Nevra had become a song of hope, and the man who once just walked past a cold, starving girl near Dock 12. He had become her hero, her protector, and her family, and together, they had rewritten a story the stars would never forget.